Keanu Reeves was quietly removed from an exclusive luxury lounge after staff failed to recognize him. But instead of causing a scene, he walked away with heartbreaking grace. His calm smile, humble words, and silent exit soon spread across the internet, turning an embarrassing insult into a legendary lesson in dignity and kindness. The man who did look important. The rain had just started in Los Angeles, the kind of soft, uncertain rain the city never quite knows what to do with. Inside the Royal Meridian Hotel, everything shone. Crystal chandeliers, polished marble floors, designer shoes that had never touched a sidewalk. People spoke in low, careful voices, as if even their words were expensive. No one paid attention to the tall man in the worn black boots and faded t-shirt as he walked through the golden lobby, shaking a few raindrops from his hair. He moved like someone who had spent years trying not to take up space, shoulders a little rounded, hands tucked into his pockets. The concierge glanced up, ready to say, "Sir, the bar is that way," then hesitated, eyes narrowing for half a second. Recognition flashed and then disappeared. The man had already looked away, giving a small, polite nod as if he were the one who didn't want to bother anyone. He wasn't here for attention. He was here because a charity organizer had begged him, one quiet hour in the luxury lounge, to thank a group of donors who were helping fund children's hospitals. He had promised he would come alone, no entourage, no drama. That was how he liked it. The elevator chimed, and he stepped into the private floor corridor that led to the lounge. A heavy security guard in a black suit waited by the entrance, earpiece glowing faintly. The guard had been told a list of names and shown a slideshow of faces, but most of the night he had been stopping people who clearly didn't belong, lost tourists, curious guests, one influencer trying to sneak past with a fake wristband. When he saw the man in black boots approaching, no obvious designer labels, no visible pass, carrying nothing but a small folded piece of paper, he shifted his weight and moved sideways to block the door. "Private event tonight, sir," the guard said, voice flat but firm. "VIP access only." The man pulled the crumpled paper from his pocket and opened it. It was just a handwritten note from the charity organizer. "Come up to the lounge around 8. I'll meet you inside. They'll know who you are." He read it again, almost apologetically, then glanced past the guard at the glittering room beyond. Laughter drifted out, the clink of glasses, the field of carefully curated smiles. He didn't look like he belonged there, and on some level he understood that. "I'm supposed to meet someone inside," he said softly. "For the children's hospital thing, I might be a little early." The guard didn't even glance at the note. He looked the man up and down, saw the scuffed boots, the faint oil stain on the black t-shirt, the hair that looked like it had been dried in a car with the windows down rather than in a spa. To him, this was simple. "Name?" he asked. The man gave it quietly, as if it were something fragile. For a split second, the guard's brow furrowed. It was a familiar name, one he had heard shouted from red carpets and movie posters. But up close, stripped of lights and makeup, the guy in front of him looked ordinary, almost tired. The guard had already been chewed out once tonight for letting in the wrong person. He wasn't about to make another mistake. "Yeah, nice try," the guard muttered. "We get that one a lot. Listen, sir, this area is for invited guests only. The real ones, you can wait downstairs at the bar." Inside the lounge, a young waitress named Sophia was weaving through tables with a silver tray full of champagne glasses. She was on her third double shift this week, shoes too tight, smile too practiced. As she reached the doorway, she heard the guard's tone harden and glanced over, just in time to see the man's expression flicker. Confusion, then embarrassment, then something like resignation. One of the glasses slipped on the tray. The man reacted without thinking, stepping forward, steadying the tray with both hands before a waterfall of champagne could crash to the floor. "Careful," he said gently, meeting Sophia's eyes with a small, almost shy smile. "Gravity's a tough critic." For a second, the rich room disappeared for her. Something about his voice, the warmth in his face, the way he apologized even though he'd just saved her from a disaster, it clicked. Her breath caught. She knew that face. She had watched his movies on a cracked phone screen during long bus rides, cried with him, cheered for him. But before she could say anything, the guard's hand clamped down on the man's shoulder. "I said this is VIP only," the guard snapped, pushing him back a step. A few nearby guests turned to look, annoyed at the disturbance. Don't bother the staff, okay? You need to leave. Sophia opened her mouth to protest, then froze. The floor manager stood at the far end of the room, arms folded, eyes sharp. One mistake and Sophia could lose the job she desperately needed. The man noticed her hesitation immediately. Instead of looking hurt, he gave her a tiny nod as if to say, "Don't worry, it's okay. I don't want to cost you anything." He could have raised his voice then. He could have spoken his name louder, pulled out his phone, made one call and had the hotel manager sprinting up the stairs. He could have humiliated the guard in front of everyone. Instead, he let out a slow breath and relaxed his shoulders. "No problem," he said quietly. "If it's an issue, I can wait somewhere else. I don't want to make trouble." The guard misread the calm as guilt. "That's right," he grunted. "Come on." His hand tightened, steering the man away from the warm, golden light of the lounge and back toward the colder hallway. Behind them, people were already murmuring. A few guests lifted their phones, half out of bored curiosity, half out of that reflexive instinct to record anything that looked like potential drama. As the door began to close, Sophia stood frozen with the tray in her hands, heart hammering. She watched the man being led out like he was a problem to be removed, not the reason half the children on that charity brochure had believed in miracles. Her fingers trembled so hard the glasses chimed against each other. She knew she should stay quiet. She knew rent was due next week. But something in his eyes when he said, "I don't want to make trouble," felt heavier than the tray she was carrying. The latch clicked, the door almost shut, and in that thin, breathless gap of space, Sophia made her choice. She shifted the tray to one hand, slid her foot forward, and pushed the door back open a few inches, just enough to see the guard marching him toward the elevator, and just enough time to decide whether she would risk everything to speak up or stay silent and watch a good man be pushed out into the hallway alone. The wrong side of the door. Sophia slid sideways through the narrow gap before the door could latch, her heart punching against her ribs. She should have stayed inside, smiled at the donors, pretended nothing was wrong. Instead, she found herself half running down the corridor, tray pressed to her chest, the soft carpet swallowing her footsteps. At the end of the hall, the guard stood by the elevator with the man in the black boots, one heavy hand still on his shoulder like he was escorting a problem, not a guest. The man didn't struggle. He just stared at the elevator numbers above the door, watching them flicker down from 23 to 15, his face calm in a way that almost hurt to look at. Every now and then he glanced back along the hallway toward the lounge, not with anger, but with something quieter, disappointment in himself for even trying to enter a room that clearly didn't want him. Sophia knew that look. She had worn it the day a scholarship office told her she didn't quite fit the profile. "Excuse me," she blurted, her voice coming out higher than she intended. The guard turned annoyed. The man turned too, his eyes softening when he recognized her. He's supposed to be here, for the charity, The guard cut her off with a sharp shake of his head. "Go back inside, Sophia. Staff aren't allowed in this corridor unless they're serving, and you're not serving, you're wandering." His tone carried a subtle warning. Behind his irritation, she caught a flicker of fear. He'd already been yelled at tonight. If this went wrong, it was his job on the line, too. Sophia swallowed. The floor manager's voice echoed in her memory. "No drama, no opinions. You're invisible unless someone needs a drink." She looked at the man's face, then at the guard, torn between her paycheck and her conscience. "He really is supposed to be here?" she tried again, softer this time. "You don't understand who he—" "It's okay," the man said gently, stepping slightly in front of her, as if shielding her from the guard's frustration. Up close, his voice had that same quiet warmth that had steadied the tray. "You don't have to get in trouble for me. I'll be fine." "But they're waiting for you," she whispered. "The kids, the donors." "I've kept people waiting before," he replied with a small half-smile. "They survive." His eyes, though, betrayed something deeper. A lifetime of being late to the people who mattered most, not because he didn't care, but because work and grief had twisted his days into strange shapes. The elevator arrived with a soft chime. The guard tapped the lobby button as if slamming a door. "Look, sir, you can argue with the manager downstairs if you want, but up here I just follow orders. No pass, no entry. I don't care what story you're selling." Sophia's fingers tightened around the tray. "He's not selling a story," she burst out. "He is the—" "Sophia," the guard snapped. "Inside now." She froze, one more word and she could lose everything. The job, the tiny studio apartment she shared with her younger brother, the fragile plan to keep him in his rehabilitation program. The man must have seen the panic flicker across her face, because he gave her that same reassuring nod as before. "Thank you," he said to her, like she had just done him a favor instead of watching him be pushed out. "Really, for trying." The elevator doors slid open. The guard stepped in first. The man followed, turning his head at the last second to look back at Sophia. Their eyes met through the narrowing gap, hers wide and helpless, his calm and oddly kind, as if he were the one comforting her about what was happening to him. The doors closed, and the soft ding of descent echoed down the empty hallway. Back inside the lounge, the charity organizer, Anna, rushed in with a folder clutched to her chest, cheeks flushed from running in heels. She scanned the room, searching for the one face she needed more than any donors. The hotel manager intercepted her with a tight smile. "Your special guest hasn't arrived yet," he said, irritation hiding behind politeness. "Our patrons are getting restless." Anna frowned. "He texted me from the lobby 10 minutes ago. He said he was on his way up. You can't miss him, he's..." The manager's phone vibrated and his smile faded as he read the message from security. "Removed suspicious man claiming to be your celebrity guest. Situation handled." His eyes widened, then flicked toward the closed elevator doors at the end of the corridor. Anna's grip on the folder tightened until the edges bent. "Please tell me," she whispered, her voice suddenly dry, "that you did not just throw out the one person every child in that hospital is waiting to see tonight." The choice to stay small. Down in the lobby bar, the world felt cheaper and somehow more honest. No chandeliers, just hanging bulbs and scratched wooden tables. A basketball game flickered across a silent TV, and the air smelled of lime, spilled beer, and wet umbrellas. The man in the black boots sat at the far end of the counter with a glass of water, spinning the coaster slowly between his fingers as if timing his breathing with each turn. He could have left. One call and a car would appear at the door, whisking him to a quieter night, a different city, another set. A part of him wanted to. The sting of humiliation still buzzed under his skin, not because a stranger hadn't recognized his face, but because he had once again learned how quickly a person could be pushed aside when they didn't look like money. He stared at his reflection in the mirrored wall of bottles, tired eyes, hair stiff from the rain, T-shirt older than half the people in the lounge upstairs. Maybe they had a point, a small, cynical voice whispered, "You never were the luxury type." A group of corporate guests at a nearby table grew louder, fueled by cocktails and frustration. One of them, a red-faced man with his tie hanging loose, squinted across the room. "Dude," he slurred to his friends, "that guy looks just like what's his name, the action dude, John something." His friend leaned back to stare. "Nah, why would he be sitting alone down here drinking water? If that was him, the whole place would be swarming." Redface grinned and pushed himself up, stumbling a little. Only one way to find out. He swaggered over, phone already in his hand, camera app open. "Hey, man," he said too loudly, "you mind if I get a picture for my wife? She loves whoever you are." The man looked up at him, a flicker of amusement cutting through the fog in his eyes. "I'm not sure your wife will be impressed by a photo of a guy waiting for an apology," he said lightly. Redface laughed, thinking it was a joke. "Yeah, that's pretty meta. Come on, just one selfie. I'll tag you as discount movie star. We'll go viral." The bartender tensed, ready to step in, but the man in boots raised a hand, a tiny gesture that somehow calmed the air around them. "How about this?" he said. "You put your phone away, you sit down with your friends, and if you still think it matters who I am when you wake up tomorrow, you come find me and we'll take that picture. Sober." The drunken man blinked, the words sinking in through the fog. There was no anger in the man's voice, no sharpness, just a firm kindness that stripped the moment of its ugliness. Slowly, almost shyly, Redface lowered his phone. Yeah, okay," he muttered, retreating to his table, suddenly more aware of himself than of the stranger he'd tried to use as a joke. At the far corner of the bar, a girl of about 10 stood beside a tired-looking woman who was paying the bill. The girl clutched a worn hospital bracelet in one hand and a small toy in the other. She had been staring at the man for several minutes, too nervous to come closer. Finally, she whispered to her mother, who followed her gaze and froze, recognition dawning. Before the woman could say anything, the girl marched forward on skinny legs that wobbled just a little. "Excuse me," she said. You look like the guy from the movie with the dog. The one where everyone is mean to you, but you still keep fighting." He turned, and for the first time that night, his eyes lit up fully. "Yeah," he asked. "Is he a good guy?" The girl nodded fiercely. "He's the best. My doctor let me watch his movie after my surgery. He said, 'See, even when bad things happen, you can still get back up.'" She flushed, suddenly shy. "If you're not him, it's okay, but you smile like him." The man's throat worked around words he didn't quite know how to say. He glanced at the bracelet on her wrist, at the small scar peeking from under her sleeve. "Tell your doctor he's a smart man," he said softly. He took a napkin, pulled a pen from his pocket, and scribbled a messy drawing of a dog with a tiny superhero cape. Underneath he wrote, "For the bravest fighter I've never met." He slid it toward her. "From a guy who's still learning how to get back up." Her face shone like the chandeliers upstairs had never managed. "Thank you," she breathed, clutching the napkin like a treasure. Her mother's eyes filled with quiet tears. As they left, Sophia appeared at the entrance of the bar, still in her work uniform, hair slightly frizzed from the humidity of the kitchen. She spotted him immediately and walked over, nerves buzzing under her skin. "I took my break," she said, sitting one stool away to give him space. "Which I might not have after this. They're not happy upstairs." "You and the guard?" he asked, half teasing, half serious. She winced. "The manager, the donors, the charity lady, the hotel owner's son who thinks he runs the place. Apparently the special guest isn't there, and rich people don't like being kept waiting for a man they think is their favorite action figure." He studied her face, reading the guilt she was trying to hide. "Hey," he said, "this isn't on you." "Yes, it is," she blurted. "I should have argued harder. I should have called Anna. I should have." "You should have kept your job," he interrupted gently. "Which you did. That matters. Besides, I've been kicked out of worse places." He smiled, but the crease between his brows said the hurt ran deeper than the joke. Before she could answer, a flurry of movement at the entrance cut through the bar's low murmur. The hotel manager, the guard from upstairs, and Anna the organizer burst in together, faces tight with panic. The guard's skin had gone the color of unbaked dough. Anna's eyes found him first, and relief flooded her features so quickly she had to catch the back of a chair to steady herself. "There you are," she gasped. "They told me you left the building. The kids are in the media room already. The donors are threatening to go home. We go live in 10 minutes. Will you still?" The manager stepped forward, sweating through his perfect suit. "Sir," he began, voice shaking, "there seems to have been a misunderstanding at the lounge entrance. Our security team." "Throughout the man the entire event is built around," Sophia muttered under her breath. The manager shot her a warning look, then forced a smile for the man in boots. "On behalf of the Royal Meridian, I want to sincerely apologize. If you'll allow us, we'd be honored to escort you upstairs." All eyes turned to him. The guard's hand twisted around his radio, knuckles white. Sophia held her breath. Anna searched his face, desperate. The man sat very still, the coaster unmoving under his fingertips, caught between the sting of what had happened and the reason he had come in the first place. He looked from the manager's polished shoes to Sophia's scuffed ones, from the guard's fear to the memory of the little girl's hospital bracelet. Somewhere above them, a screen was already waiting, a room full of children huddled in thin blankets, hoping their favorite quiet hero would tell them, just for a moment, that pain wasn't the end of their story. He took a slow breath, the choice settling on his shoulders like a familiar weight. "Tell me something," he said quietly to the manager. "If I go back up there, what changes because of tonight?" The walk back upstairs. Silence clung to the bar for a few seconds, heavy and expectant. The manager opened his mouth, then closed it again, clearly unused to questions that didn't involve room service or billing. "Changes," he repeated weakly. "Sir, we'll ensure this never happens again. You'll have full access to all our VIP." "That's not what I meant," the man interrupted, his voice still mild but edged with something firmer now. He slid off the bar stool, standing in a posture that seemed to straighten everything around him. "I'm not the only person who's ever been turned away from that door. I'm just the only one whose name you recognize. So if I walk back into that lounge, shake hands, smile for photos, does anything get better for the people who don't look important enough tomorrow?" The guard stared at the floor, shame burning hot on his neck. Sophia watched the manager fumble for a polished answer and fail. Anna clutched her folder tighter, sensing that whatever happened next would be remembered long after the gala centerpieces were thrown away. The man looked over at Sophia. "What's your name again?" "Sophia," she answered, surprised. "You ever been stopped from going somewhere?" he asked, "just because somebody thought you weren't the type?" She gave a short, humorless laugh. "Everywhere that serves food I can't afford, every party I've worked, every office I delivered resumes to," she hesitated. "And once at a hospital, actually. They didn't believe I was family. I had to wait outside while my brother went into surgery without me." His jaw tightened for a moment. Something in that story touched an old wound in him. "Then tonight isn't really about me," he said. "It's about you, him, that little girl at the bar, the next stranger who walks toward that door." He turned back to the manager. "I'll go upstairs, I'll talk to the kids, I'll thank the donors, but I'm not walking into that lounge because I'm special. I'm walking in because people who aren't on your guest list deserve better than what I saw tonight." His gaze shifted to the guard, not accusatory, just steady. "Can we agree on that?" The manager swallowed. In the reflection of the bar mirror, he saw not just a celebrity he had almost lost, but a story that could wreck his hotel's reputation by morning if it went wrong. "Yes," he said quickly, then again more honestly. "Yes, we can." The guard finally lifted his head. "Sir," he said, voice rough, I'm sorry, I get paid to say no. I've seen people lie their way into rooms all my life. I thought I was protecting the guests. I never stopped to think how it feels on the other side of that door." The man nodded, the anger in him melting into something gentler. "You were doing the job they gave you with the rules they taught you. Just remember there are people behind those rules. Next time someone walks up looking like they don't belong, maybe ask a second question before you push them away." He held out his hand. The guard stared, confused, then took it. The handshake was brief, but something in the guard's shoulders unclenched, like a knot he hadn't known he was carrying had finally loosened. "Elevator?" the man asked quietly. They rode up together, him, the guard, Sophia, Anna, and the trembling manager, pressed into the faux wood silence of the lift. The numbers climbed, 3, 8, 15. No one spoke. Sophia stole a glance at him in the mirrored wall. He looked peaceful now, the earlier hurt folded into a kind of calm resolve. She wondered how many times in his life he had chosen not to fight the people who hurt him, but to teach them instead. At 23, the doors slid open. The luxury lounge buzzed beyond, restless and glittering, full of people who had no idea he had already been here once and been turned away. As they stepped out, conversations faltered. Heads turned. Phones lifted. Anna rushed ahead, whispering frantic instructions to the event host, who nearly dropped the microphone when he understood who had just walked back in. No announcement came. The man simply moved through the room, past waiters carrying trays of delicate food he couldn't pronounce, past donors boasting softly about tax deductions and networking. Some recognized him and straightened in their seats, ready to perform their best. "We've always admired your work," smiles. Others saw only a man in worn boots and a clean but simple jacket and dismissed him as staff. He stopped at the small stage set up near the far wall, where a huge screen showed a grid of hospital rooms. Children in gowns and wheelchairs filled every square, their faces glowing in the bluish light. Some waved at the camera. Some clutched stuffed animals. All of them were waiting. He picked up the microphone, turning it once in his hand like a familiar prop, then set it down on the stand. For a moment he just looked at the screen, at the kids, at their parents sitting beside them, at the nurses in the background pretending not to cry. When he finally spoke, his voice went not first to the wealthy people in the room, but to the ones watching from beds. "I was almost late tonight," he said. "Not because of traffic, because sometimes the world forgets that a human being is more than their shoes or their clothes or the room they're standing outside of." A soft murmur rippled through the lounge as guests shifted in their chairs. Someone at the door thought I didn't belong, and truth is, for a second I believed them. He paused, letting that admission hang in the air. The kids on the screen leaned closer. But then I remembered something, he continued. The people I'm here for don't care what room I walk into. They care whether I show up for them. They care whether someone tells them they matter, even when they feel like they don't. So I came back upstairs, not to prove them wrong. He nodded toward the unseen doorway. But to prove you right, because you, he pointed gently at the camera, are worth walking back for. In the back of the room, Sophia felt her throat tighten. The guard hovered beside the door, listening like a man hearing his own life explained in someone else's voice. The manager stared, calculating and moved at the same time, beginning to understand that this quiet speech might change more than just a headline. The man took a breath, ready to bridge the space between the sick children and the glittering donors with a single, fragile thread of honesty. "And if tonight taught me anything," he said, his gaze sweeping the room, "it's that the most important doors in life are the ones we open for someone else." He set his hand on his chest, about to share the story he almost never told, the one about the night his own world had collapsed and how a stranger's small kindness had kept him standing, when a sharp chime sliced through the room. Every phone on every table lit up at once, buzzing and flashing. Sophia's screen showed a notification from a social media app. So did the manager, S. So did the guard, S. At the top of the page, a shaky video had already gathered thousands of views. Grainy footage of a security guard gripping the shoulder of a man in worn boots, escorting him away from a glowing lounge door while a young waitress watched helplessly from behind. A hastily typed caption blazed across the screen. "Hotel kicks out beloved star from VIP lounge. You won't believe his reaction." The room filled with the electric crackle of live embarrassment and dawning realization as every head slowly turned toward the quiet man on the stage, who now stood at the center of a storm he had never asked for.